In what feels like example number 95 of how the NFL schedule is terrible this year, and how Mike North, the person who helped design the schedule, put no thought whatsoever into this thing, I give you this. Welcome everybody to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Garinai, representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about what else but the NFL schedule, because something came out today that was very interesting about the schedule. And for those who don't know, the NFL schedule came out last week. It's absolutely terrible. It came out exactly 1 week ago today on Wednesday. I've done so many videos on how bad the schedule is. You can go check some of those out on the channel. I'll leave a link to a playlist that I made of all these videos in the upper right corner and the description down below. But in light of the criticism that the schedule has gotten, and to give some more transparency on how it works, the people that helped make the schedule decided to do an AMA on Reddit, or an Ask Me Anything, where people could ask questions and the NFL would respond to said questions. Now, this AMA was not very good. They didn't answer a whole lot of questions, and the questions they did answer were pretty light. There were a lot of tough questions that they just skirted by. They didn't answer. You don't have to answer all the questions in AMA, but we did get this question that I found very interesting from a user by the name of It Is Your Personality. And this highlights just how bad the NFL schedule is and how bad of a job Mike North did in terms of monitoring the schedule. At any point in the process, do you do a check to prevent scheduling the same matchups in the same week year after year? I asked because the Packers are playing the Vikings in Week 17 for the 4th consecutive season. He also asks if this is his full-time job, to which he responds that yes, this is his full-time job. He works with the broadcasting partners during the season, but they work on the schedule for months in advance. Right after the Super Bowl is done, they start working on this thing. So, what Mike North said was as follows. We carefully monitor who plays whom in Week 18. We shouldn't have the same divisional matchup year after year in the final weekend of the season, and certainly not in the same place. That is something that we try to avoid. Now, that makes total sense on the surface. Mike North, his job when looking at the schedule is saying, okay, do we have the same matchup every single year in Week 18? We don't want to have that. We want to switch it up. We don't want the same teams playing each other year after year. Of course, you have to have divisional games in Week 18, so you're limited in terms of who you can play and where you can play those games, but we don't want to have the same matchup year after year. And if we do have the same matchup in back-to-back years or in 3 straight years or something like that, it's a flaw in the schedule. We mark it and we try again with something new because we don't want to have that happen. And again, no problems with that whatsoever. If that's the case though, if you are monitoring the schedule to make sure that you don't have the same matchup back-to-back years and every single year and in the same place, especially because you emphasize the same place, then why is the NFC North the exact same? Like, if that is your job, if you are admitting that your job is to create the schedule and look at it and make sure that there are no flaws or as few flaws as possible, and you say that one of the things you really key in on is that Week 18 is different every year, then why last year did the Minnesota Vikings take on the Detroit Lions at Detroit during the final week of the season, and why did the Chicago Bears take on the Green Bay Packers last year at Lambeau Field during the final week of the season, and then Minnesota's taking on Detroit on the road this year, and Chicago is taking on Green Bay on the road this year as well. So you carefully monitor to make sure that you're not getting the same matchup year after year, and certainly not in the same place. I love how you emphasize that. And yet the NFC North is exactly the same. You didn't realize that. Then again, you didn't realize that the Bears didn't have any divisional games until Week 11, so who knows what you're doing over there. And then again, you're making sure that you're not playing the same team year after year in Week 18 so that you switch it up, you get some variety. And yet, the New York Giants are playing the Philadelphia Eagles this year in Week 18 during the 2024 season, just as they did in 2023, and what do you know, just as they did in 2022, which also means that the Dallas Cowboys are playing the Washington Commanders in 2024 to close the season out, just as they did last year in 2023, and just as they did the year before that in 2022. So if I'm getting this right, you are emphasizing the fact that you do not want to have the same matchups every single year during Week 18, and yet, despite this being a point of emphasis for you, and despite this being part of your job description according to you, You have the same matchups in the NFC North for the second straight year in the same exact locations, and you have on the NFC East side the same exact matchups 3 years running. How on earth does that make any sense? Seriously, Mike North, if that is your job, how on earth does that make any sense? You have schedule rotations for a lot of other things. You have schedule rotations for when AFC teams play 9 games at home and when NFC teams play 9 games at home. AFC, it's odd number years. NFC, it's even number years. You have rotations where divisions play each other. You have inside the conference once every 3 years. And you have outside the conference once every 4 years. You have rotations. If you really care about this that much, why can't you do a rotation for Week 18? How hard can that be? You should be able to easily do a rotation without any problem whatsoever, where every 6 years, you play each team twice in Week 18. Once at home and once on the road. It should not be that hard. So every 3 years, you play everyone once. So how will it work this year? Let's say 2024, Jags play at the Colts. 2025 versus the Titans. 2026 at the Texans. 2027 versus the Colts. 2028 at the Titans. 2029 versus the Texans. And then you repeat the cycle. It should not be that hard. You do for everything else. If you care about that much, why can't you do a rotation? Oh, I know why. Because you're lazy. You don't know what you're doing. That's why. Because you clearly did not put any thought into this whatsoever. Because you wanted to have emphasized Week 18, the matchups being different, and then give us the same exact matchups for 3 years running on the NFC East side and 2 years running in the same exact location on the NFC North side. And yes, if you have the rotation, there might be some scheduling conflicts with certain teams, like for the college football playoff. Miami, you might have the Orange Bowl interfering with Week 18. Dallas, the Cotton Bowl could interfere during Week 18. Arizona, you could have the Fiesta Bowl interfering during Week 18. So maybe there are certain times and certain years where they won't have home availability, but those are rare exceptions that you can work around when it comes up and when it arises. It's doable. It's absolutely doable. You schedule around a lot of other stuff. You schedule around baseball games when 2 teams share the same parking lot with the Ravens and the Orioles, with the Bengals and the Reds, with the Steelers and the Pirates. You schedule around concerts when that happens. You schedule around One Direction when they did their final tour. You scheduled around, obviously, Taylor Swift this year with the Colts, with the Saints, with the Dolphins. You can easily schedule around a few football games when the time comes and work around the rotations that way. I just don't get what the point of this AMA was and what this answer was by Mike North. It shows how bad of a job he did designing this schedule if he's flat out saying that, yeah, we look at Week 18, we want to make sure we have different matchups every single year. We don't want it to get stale. We don't want teams playing at the same location every single year against the same teams. We don't want the same matchups every single year. And then you go ahead and you give us this, where the Giants and Eagles are playing during the final week of the season for the 3rd straight year, and where the Cowboys and the Commanders are playing each other during the final week of the season for the 3rd straight year. And then on the NFC North side, you give us the same exact matchups in the same exact locations, which is what you said you made a conscious effort to avoid, and you easily could have avoided it if you wanted to, and looked at the schedule for more than 3 seconds when you put it out. But what else have I come to expect from the NFL with their schedule release? Again, this is one of the worst schedules I've ever seen, not just on the Jaguars side with 2 games in Jacksonville in a 9-week stretch, but on a lot of teams' side. Pittsburgh got robbed, Chicago got robbed, Minnesota has 2 home games in Minnesota in a 9-game stretch. It's ridiculous, or a 9-week stretch, I should say. Absolutely insane. A lot of teams got jobbed by the schedule. A lot of teams just got screwed over. And a lot of matchups don't make a lot of sense and go against what the NFL is trying to preach and what the NFL is trying to do. And I don't know why that's the case. I really don't know why that's the case, why they didn't put any thought into the schedule and look over for more than 5 seconds. But if you want any further proof of how bad the schedule is, Mike North admitted that no repeat matchups should happen Week 18, and yet we get a crap ton of them during this Week 18 because he couldn't be bothered to look at it. Unbelievable stuff. But what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that there should be rotation during Week 18 where you don't get the same matchups over and over again, and where you have teams playing at home 3 times and on the road 3 times, so they're not playing on the road all the time or at home all the time? Do you think that there should be something with Week 18 that prevents something like this from happening on the NFC North side and the NFC East side with repeat matchups? Do you think it should go back to what it was before 2010, where there were no divisional matchups in Week 18, or Week 17 back then, I should say, and you just play whoever, and you have interconference matchups, and you can get divisional matchups, but it's not required? If you want to go back to that, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But that is going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jaguar9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jaguar9 signing off, and as always, go Jags.